Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, s'il vous plaît, accueillez, please welcome, Nicolas Béliveau.
All right. Bonsoir, mesdames et messieurs. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Bienvenue au lancement de la 7e édition du Coopérathon, le Coopérathon 2022, présenté par Desjardins, KPMG et Microsoft. Welcome to the 7th edition of the Coopérathon, presented by Desjardins, KPMG, and Microsoft. So that was some awesome hype-up music. Thank you very much for sliding my name in there. But if you didn't hear, my name is Nick Beliveau. I'm super happy to be your host and MC this evening. I've actually been part of the Coopérathon family for a couple of years now. I was first on the organization committee for the 3rd edition of the Coopérathon back in 2018. Where I actually got this t-shirt. I'm very happy after COVID, it still fits. I took it out under the bed this morning and I was like, hallelujah. Mais très content d'être ici pour être votre animateur ce soir. Ça fait 4 ans que j'anime, ou je fais partie de l'animation des lancements du Coopérathon et ça fait grand plaisir de voir beaucoup de faces familières. Very happy to see some familiar faces and some new faces here this evening. Speaking of which, I'd like to just start by asking a question. Who here this year is participating in the Coopérathon? Raise your hands. Who here is participating in the Coopérathon? Awesome. Let's give them a round of a hand, please. Très bien. Et qui est mentor cette année? Who's a mentor of the Coopérathon? Give it up for our mentors. And last but certainly not least, who's a partner of the Coopérathon this year? Please raise your hand. Round of applause. Awesome. We'll be hearing from all our partners very shortly. Cette année, on est sous la thématique des retrouvailles. Des retrouvailles autant en personne, finalement, et les retrouvailles en ligne. I'd like to give a quick little shout out. We have our friends. We have 3 cameras here. Friends listening in from Ontario. And well, the Coopérathon's open across the country. So hello to everyone tuning in. La thématique cette année, c'est vraiment autour de la santé. The theme this year is around health. Both human health, but also the health of our planet. To answer the questions around these challenges, this year, participants will be asked to leverage either AI or data science. Cette année, les équipes participantes devront utiliser l'intelligence artificielle ou les données de la science pour résoudre les challenges proposés. J'aimerais remercier la participation des partenaires, sans quoi cette compétition n'aurait pas eu lieu. Chaque année, les partenaires contribuent énormément pour faire en sorte que l'entrepreneuriat d'impact puisse continuer et vraiment proposer des défis hyper intéressants et vraiment vous supporter tout au long du Coopérathon. A big thank you also to Mila for hosting us here this evening in this wonderful space, finally in person. Thank you. So the Coopérathon, I was saying it's the 7th edition. It's seen over 550 startups created over the last couple of years. You could do the math. That's just about 100 per year. And over 6,500 participants throughout the last editions. So some of you who raise your hands this evening, you're now contributing. You're now part of that community. And for me, that's what I think is most impressive about the Coopérathon. That's why I keep coming back year after year. It's because of you who participate and you really want to have an impact and build a project that's not just a startup to have a startup, but to make a difference. So thank you for being part of the community and good luck on the Coopérathon journey. So this evening, we're going to start with a few presentations from our partners, some keynote presentations as well to inspire these aspiring entrepreneurs in the room. And then we'll go into the networking aspect of the evening, the team building, where we'll split the in-person and online activities. And we'll tell you a bit more about that later. We're translating the evening, so I'm just going to share some notes about how, if you're tuning in a different language, it's going to be mostly English, but if you want to listen in French or vice versa, this is going to be the fun part. I have to read this part because it's quite technical. 1, download and install the Interpretify app. Plug in your earphones, and I feel like I'm a flight attendant. Plug in your earphones or headset and click OK. Enter the event token and click Connect. So if you're online, you enter Coopérathon 22. And for people here in person, Coopérathon 22, Mila. Important detail. 4, if two-factor authentication is active, oh no, enter your registered email address or mobile phone number to receive a verification code. You enter that code, and then you received either via email, oh, there we go, someone just received it, and enter and click submit once you enter that code. Finally, select your preferred audio language. If incoming audio volume is selected, original floor sound will be audible when interpreter is silent. I hope that was clear. OK. Sinon, je vais essayer de... Ben, tiens, juste par curiosité in the room, qui parle juste français? Levez la main, juste pour que je sache. Y a-t-il du monde qui parle juste français? Super. On va faire un effort particulier pour vous, monsieur. All right. So let's get the evening going with our first presentation. Mesdames et messieurs, j'aimerais présenter le chef technologie et exploitation du mouvement Desjardins. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome the CTO of Desjardins, Monsieur Daniel Grossi.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez? Oui, c'est bon. Ben, j'aimerais juste... Là, vous n'entendez plus. Donc, j'aimerais premièrement dire que moi, je n'ai pas eu de T-shirt, and I think I was actually punked because I want one of your T-shirts, by the way, for the Coopérathon. Premièrement, ma présentation va être en français. C'est un réel plaisir d'être parmi vous ce soir. C'est un privilège d'être ici aussi pour représenter Desjardins. Le Coopérathon, c'est vraiment et c'est sincèrement une grande fierté pour Desjardins parce que c'est une tribune fantastique pour co-créer et vraiment de soutenir la relève entrepreneuriale. Depuis les débuts en 2016, le Coopérathon a réuni vraiment la science et la technologie pour développer des projets innovants et générer des impacts socio-économiques très importants. On a eu la chance d'accueillir plus que 6000 participants et on a lancé 500 projets jusqu'à maintenant. Et j'ai très hâte de voir comment le programme et la compétition de cette année va nous amener, nous permettre d'aller plus loin de ce qu'on a déjà fait. Pendant cette 7e édition, vous allez entendre parler aujourd'hui beaucoup, comme on vient juste de l'entendre, de la science des données et aussi de l'intelligence artificielle. L'innovation va prendre forme avec votre participation et aussi avec la collaboration des partenaires qui sont dans la salle, que vous connaissez, qu'on a vu sur les tableaux. On voit Microsoft, KPMG, Génome Québec, Zone, Hashtag et Desjardins, bien sûr. Je profiterai aussi du moment pour remercier tout spécifiquement un partenaire, Montréal NewTech, et Montréal NewTech qui nous aide à co-organiser la Coopérathon depuis la toute première année, en 2016. Chez Desjardins, on utilise l'intelligence artificielle pour amener une valeur à 3 niveaux. Premièrement, on le fait au niveau de la gestion de nos risques, la gestion des risques pour Desjardins, mais aussi pour nos membres et clients. Deuxièmement, au niveau de l'expérience client. Et troisièmement, au niveau de la modernisation de nos paiements, nos services bancaires et aussi d'assurance. La valeur qui est générée pour nos membres et clients et aussi pour notre organisation doit se faire vraiment en utilisant l'intelligence artificielle de façon responsable. Et chez Desjardins, on a mis de l'avant plusieurs initiatives pour s'assurer d'adhérer vraiment à ces principes et aussi à une pratique d'éthique. Premièrement, on veut protéger nos données. Je parle ici de s'assurer qu'on a une qualité, on a de l'exactitude, on a une traçabilité et on est capable de mesurer la sécurité de nos données. Deuxièmement, on veut respecter également la vie privée. On veut dire ici d'aller chercher le consentement de nos membres et clients afin d'utiliser leurs données. Et dernièrement, on veut favoriser vraiment la confiance. On doit être équitable et c'est d'assurer d'utiliser des données qui sont vraiment représentatives de la diversité sociale et culturelle dans l'ensemble de nos données pour le mouvement. Je vais vous partager 2 exemples. Peut-être que vous avez entendu parler d'une application qui s'appelle Radar. Radar, c'est une application qu'on a bâtie qui nous permet de connaître à l'avance avec l'intelligence artificielle qu'est-ce qui va arriver au niveau de l'environnement. Donc, Radar est utilisé pour nos membres des clients pour s'assurer qu'on est capable de prévenir nos membres des clients si on pense qu'il va y avoir quelque chose dans l'environnement comme un problème de grêle, ou la neige ou quelque chose, vraiment un ouragan qui va nous aviser. Comme ça, on peut aviser de façon proactive nos membres des clients pour dire hey, peut-être protégez vos biens pour ceux qui sont vraiment avec nous. Donc, une deuxième, c'est un exemple au niveau des assureurs. Aujourd'hui, nos experts en sinistre doivent rapidement associer si un véhicule est endommagé et pour essayer de réduire les coûts pour nos membres et clients. Donc, on a développé avec l'intelligence artificielle une application qui va, en premier coup, lors de notre premier appel, essayer de réduire l'impact puis savoir si un véhicule est vraiment une perte totale. Et à date, on sauve à peu près 1 million de dollars par année juste avec une application. Je vous ai présenté 2 exemples aujourd'hui, mais c'est vraiment clair qu'on en a plusieurs d'autres. Je n'ai pas assez le temps. Ça se finit ici, mais je pourrais en parler longuement. Desjardins vient tout juste de signer une entente avec le MILA, une entente qui va durer 3 ans, qui va nous permettre d'aller encore plus loin avec vos projets innovants. Et donc, pour terminer, j'aimerais souhaiter vraiment le plus grand succès à tous les participants et les participantes dans la salle et aussi aux chers invités qui ont été invités aujourd'hui pour vous parler. Donc, premièrement, je m'arrête ici pour enchaîner avec les co-conférenciers invités. Et Nicolas, je pense que je vais être invité parce qu'on a invité spécial monsieur et professeur Yoshua Bengio. Merci beaucoup.
Super. Merci beaucoup, Daniel. Well, he introduced already our next speaker, but before I introduce Joshua, I'd like to introduce a good friend who will be moderating the chat. Some of you probably already know him. He's the co-founder of the Coopérathon and a board member of Montreal New Tech. He's the person who introduced me to the Coopérathon in the first place. Please get it up for Elias Bencheloun. Personal, I thought we were going to say his name in there too. The next person we'd like to present, our guest of honor this evening, he's the full professor in Department of Computer Science and Operations Research at Université Montréal. He's the founder of the space we're in today and the scientific director of MILA, scientific director of IVADO, and he's considered one of the world leaders in artificial intelligence and deep learning. He's the recipient of the 2018 AM Turing Award with Jeff Hinton and Jan LeCun, known as the Nobel Prize of Computing. He's a fellow of both the Royal Society of London and Canada, an officer of the Order of Canada, a Knight of the Legion of Honor of France, and a Canada CFAR AI Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome, it was a lot, Joshua Bengio.
Bon. Bonjour, Monsieur Bengio. Bonjour, Yoshua.
Bonjour, Elias.
Vraiment un honneur de t'avoir avec nous. Merci beaucoup d'avoir pris le temps. Je sais qu'il y a énormément de choses sur ton agenda, and I know that there are some deadlines for tomorrow, and you probably didn't sleep that much, and you still have a bunch of things to do. So thank you so much for being here with us. And I know that the list of awards and the list of prizes and the list of citations, etc., could be for the next 2 hours. So we're very privileged, and I definitely hope that whatever we're going to discuss and the other people who are going to join us will inspire the people who are here to make the jump, to learn more about data science, about AI, and especially what we can do to actually change the world and not just talk about it. Avant de rentrer dans le vif du sujet, je serais vraiment curieux, tu peux t'asseoir évidemment, on peut rester debout comme tu le souhaites là. On m'a dit qu'il fallait rester un peu à distance parce qu'on veut quand même te garder en santé. Donc, moi, je serais vraiment curieux, mais aussi peut-être pour des gens qui ne sont pas forcément très au fait de l'IA, de ce qu'un professeur comme vous fait. Ça ressemble à quoi un peu ta journée, mis à part dormir tard et te réveiller très tôt parce que tu es très occupé?
In French or in English?
Whatever language you want. We have a translation live. So Spanish, maybe not, but English or French is all right.
That might work. I'll do English.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so when I wake up, I don't go out of my bed right away. I keep my eyes closed and thoughts come to me. You need some space, first of all. Like, the other thing is I don't want to have some ugly noise waking me up. I just wake up with the natural ones.
Oh, right.
And yeah, because it destroys your brain if you do that, right?
Okay.
No, but so the
Switch
important
off
part,
all your alarms.
the important thing is in my day, there are moments where like I'm not stimulated by meetings, conferences, deadlines, and stuff. So one of them is when I'm waking up, like, oh, there's these questions that I've been thinking about for days, for months, and they're like brewing in my mind. And you need some time in your day for this. And when I wake up is one of them. The other is I go out and then take a walk. And that's incredible. It's like your brain is working so much better during and after. I don't know why, but it's and then when I come back, I write down all the things that came to me. So yeah, you need thinking time, and in our like incredibly busy lives, you need to make sure you set it aside. Otherwise you're just like in the short-term rat race. So that was just the beginning of the day, but otherwise it's like meetings, and time set aside for reading and writing and going to bed late.
And getting other requests to show up at some events, I guess. Wonderful. But speaking of which, and as thank you for this morning routine. I think we can learn from it a bit. I probably have to learn something from it. But we're here to talk about AI, and we talk so much about AI in the medias, and it feels like it's this all-powerful thing, but at the same time, we've seen many harsher realities at the same time. For people who are here who are not necessarily like as versed, because we have a diversity of people, can you maybe just like highlight few of the possibilities and potentials, and maybe in a more pragmatic way? I know we can talk for hours about that. And
potential is infinite. What can I say? So our brain is a machine. Some people don't believe it, but it is really. It's a very complicated one. There's no reason that we won't be able to build machines that are as smart as we are in the future. And we've made huge progress in the last decades. And there is still a huge gap between current state-of-the-art in AI and human intelligence. So that means the current systems could be a lot better. Not to say that sometimes they do really stupid things. But it means that there's lots of opportunities because of research that is happening now. But there's something more, which is even if we were to stop research in AI today, there's like lots and lots of areas where the current state-of-the-art could be applied. And people like me often don't think about those possibilities. You have to be your hands and your feet in something, in some domain, in order to realize, oh, there's a niche, there's a potential here. And so I can't really answer your question because I'm involved in some areas, but I know there's like a lot more, and we need a lot more people to think, oh, here is an opportunity where we could use AI and it could really be transformative.
I'm getting to more specificities, but your answer is answering actually in the sense of AI is the tool, and I don't want to like put words, but we need the expertise and those fields, and it's by creating that serendipitous moment between the experts that have maybe been working in that field, like Daniel was talking about like whether technology or health or insurance, etc., for years.
Yeah.
To mix and match in a way with experts, and we're in Mila. It's probably like one of the biggest centers with this expertise, and that's why I'm actually, when you were talking about having like that kind of partnership, this is crucial to have industry players to actually give money, but also give time and their expertise. And we're lucky to have few people, even from Desjardins, who come in, and I hope that they will come even
and for
further.
the people with the AI expertise or the programming expertise and so on, you need to persevere to learn about that area. So I'll probably mention it more later, but in the last 2.5 years, I learned so much about biotechnology and drugs, because I thought, gee, there's this pandemic, I have to do something. And so I learned about biology, I mean, this part of biology, that, how cells work and infectious diseases and so on. And I knew almost nothing. And it was a lot of effort, and I still have a lot to learn. But it's so enriching to go through this learning outside of your field where your skills could be useful. So I encourage everyone to find their niche and work, and learn and think about how they could have an impact.
Speaking of which, thank you very much. Talking about impact and talking about like those fields and the power of collaboration. You've collaborated with multiple institutes, organizations, etc. over the last couple of years. Can you maybe give us a few examples of this kind of collaboration and the challenges around social impact, whether it's climate, like my colleague talked earlier about the topics of like health of humans, health of the planet. Can you maybe elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah. Let's see. So Sasha, who's here, has been involved with many of us here at Mila and trying to map out some of the applications of machine learning in fighting climate change and mitigating climate change. And one of the things we learned is how diverse, this whole area of just the climate aspect. There are also like other things in environment, and it goes from things like climate science to things like I'm working on right now, material discovery, which could be used for new batteries and carbon capture and things like this, and power systems and all kinds of things. So yeah, it's often the case that when you start digging, you realize how rich something like this is, and there will be experts that you have to reach out to and be humble, because you have to learn, and maybe your preconceptions have to be adapted, and so that's one example. So I mentioned the pandemic. Actually, the first project we did at the beginning of the pandemic was involving epidemiology, because we were like reading about the numbers and the infections and worrying about what's going to happen, and so we were thinking, oh, we could use machine learning to help in contact tracing, and we had this big project and working with a lot of people in epidemiology and medicine, talking with people who were in hospitals and getting this first wave of deaths, which was terrible. So it was an amazing learning experience, and often the challenge for these very applied projects with domains like this, and many other domains, is it's not just that you have to learn this other field, the other person too, and you don't speak the same language. So you need patience and you need also to, if you look at the longer term, so as a professor and somebody in a role that can have influence, to stimulate careers at the interface of these fields. So I think one of the things that's going to happen in AI is there will be many more of these multilingual people. So right now we have like data scientists and AI experts on one hand, and then we have experts of various fields. But in the future, the vast majority of people that are working with AI are going to be experts in both their field and the use of AI in their field. And so, you know, I would like this to become more formal in university and training, but any one of us can become one of these bilingual persons.
Absolutely, and I think this is going to be a huge asset, because even for people who are maybe in the room, who are thinking about their careers, their future, I know we have a bunch of students as well who are joining us here or online, and they're thinking about their future.
Yeah, there's a huge need for that. And it's not like there's one niche, right? There's going to be a lot, and there's already, so yeah, at Desjardins, you know, I know some people who've been working on applications of AI in finance and in you know, bank systems and so on, and this is its own world, right? And you can become an expert in that, and in every other area. I see this growth. So I was mentioning biotechnology. There's now a huge push from pharmaceutical industry to use AI. So they're trying to recruit people, and there's a large number of people who used to be doing bioinformatics, which was not quite AI, but you know, computer science and biology in the context of like molecular biology and things like this. And suddenly, many of them are, you know, becoming AI experts to some degree, because it's changing the field. And like in many other fields, it's happening because new techniques have arisen that allow to collect data at a large scale and to design experiments at a large scale. And this is something that a normal human brain cannot do. Like, I cannot read the results of 100,000 experiments. Each of them involves, you know, reading the genes, the gene activities. So you've got 20,000 numbers for each of them. And you can also design those experiments, like, you know, how you're going to mess with those cells and so on. There's no way. You can't do that. So you have to use your intelligence to somehow design algorithms that will both choose what to do, what drugs to try, and things like that, out of like millions and billions and 10 to the 60, and how to interpret the results, which are also like very high dimensional. So this is an example that I see that's going to be transformative, the marriage of, let's say, cell biology and biotechnology and machine learning and AI. But I think it's going to happen in many other places where we have more and more robots, and we have visual data capture, you know, from satellites or whatever, where it just becomes impossible for the traditional ways to really take advantage of the new data that's coming.
I think we can take like a little break, because you talked about the examples around satellites and the tools also that can be at hand. And we're lucky to have with us Bruno and Sasha. Bruno from Microsoft Planetary Computer, and Sasha Lucioni from Hugging Face. And both are companies that I think empower this kind of applications and maybe prototyping, leveraging data, algorithms. And I don't want to like steal the punch, so I will shut up here. But if Bruno or if Nick, you can introduce Bruno, maybe we can take a little break, and then we can jump back at the fireside chat. You're still with us for a bit?
Right? Yeah.
Super. Merci.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Elias. By the way, we just want to mention, if you do have any questions for our panelists this evening and the keynote speakers, we'll display a QR code on the screen normally right now that you could scan. Invite you all to scan it so you have access to the link at least. And if you have any questions anytime, you could enter it in. And during the panel discussion, we'll be able to address your questions. And for the people listening online, on the right hand of your screen with Slido, you'll be able to enter your questions there, and we'll tackle them just a bit later. Our next speaker is coming live from the US by video. I just spoke to him earlier. He really wanted to be here in person, but it wasn't possible. He is the Microsoft Planetary Computer Program Director. He's an impact scientist with a PhD in astrophysics and a rocket science postdoc. Bruno has led big data innovation at the World Bank Innovation Lab, served as VP Social Impact at the satellite company Satellogic, and Chief Scientist at Mapbox. He's published the book Impact: Science on the Role of Science and Research for Social and Environmental Impact. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Bruno Sanchez Andrade Nuño.
That's such an energetic music. Thank you very much for having me there. I'm so sorry I cannot be there in person, but I really wanted to join and share what I can to motivate the work that you're doing with the Coopérathon. So first of all, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for everyone who's here. As it was said, I am the director of the Planetary Computer, which is massive, like 60 petabytes of data about the Earth, and tools to compute and drive insights on that. And I'm happy to answer questions on those. But the most important thing that I want to share with you all is that we need you. We need you, and specifically we need groups of you. That's what I love the name of the Coopérathon, to drive the insights and at the end, the impact that we need to solve the challenges of today. And the topic of this year of the health of human health and environmental health is very close to not only my heart, it's very close to the work that I lead in Microsoft, but also my professional drive in general. And I know it's also of many of you. So I wanted to share a little bit of why we need you to work on environmental sustainability specifically, or health of the planet, if you want to call it that. And maybe some of you say, oh, but I'm not that good. I'm pretty sure we don't have any expert that knows more about AI than Josa in the room at award of the Twin Award. I'm Jet. Maybe in the future we will have one. I don't know. And I'm pretty sure no one in the room yet knows as much about the planetary computer as I might know about, or other fields. But my point is that no one is supposed to know about everything. And Joshua was talking a little bit about this. It is the cooperation of experts in different fields and local people with local needs that are able to then implement those things in reality. Because at the end of the day, what we are trying to do here is not just increase knowledge, which is important, to explore the limits of the human knowledge, is to solve, to have an impact. And for that, not only you need the experts, you need the data, and you need the computation, but you also need to know who is going to drive those impacts in the ground, who is going to make those decisions, how do we empower, how do we help our elected officials, or how we help companies, how do we create companies, startups, like in this Coopérathon. And we live in such exciting times. We never had as much data around the world. We never had as many tools like AI or data science. If you think about it, we live in an age for the first time that we have the ability to query the Earth everywhere and ask questions of what is where, like what are the forests of the world, what are the cities of the world, what is the light at night, and we can measure the people that are struggling today to, for example, have lights at night with satellite images, or we can see how erosion is happening, or the impacts of devastating impacts that's happening, for example, in the south of Florida on Ian. And it is extremely important to understand that, but then it's also extremely important to go from that knowledge to the impact. So what I want to tell you, as I said, is why we need you and why this is an important thing to do and a good thing to do. And there's like 3 pillars I want to highlight, and I want to explain quickly, and then hopefully we go to the third presentation and we go to the questions. And the 3 things I want you to know about environmental sustainability is that it's increasingly complicated. It's true. It's increasingly recognized as a dependency, as an opportunity by more and more people, which is important because then the work you do is going to be paid more attention. And it's also so interrelated to livelihoods, to nature, to people. It's not an isolated problem to talk about sustainability, environmental sustainability, or biodiversity. So the three things is increasingly complicated. We talked already a lot about this. To do the best work today, you need to be an expert on AI. You need to be an expert on data. You need to be an expert on clouds. You need to be an expert on your fields. You need to be an expert on geospatial. Obviously, no one is an expert in all of those things. And that's why you need a team of people to sit around the table, not only of the expertise of those, but those who represent the people that is affected by it, those who represent the knowledge of the natural environment, ecosystems that are subject to these stressors. So we need to work together. Second one is that it's increasingly recognized, and many of you know the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals for about hunger, about health, about the environment that the UN in cooperation with countries around the world, civil society, NGOs set these goals for 2030, and we're in the track of not meeting them if we continue in this, especially with things like COVID. It has rolled back the clock of that. So we need all of you to work in these things. If you also work in, let's say, it's more finance environments or capitalistic environments or tools of impact through that, the good news is that there has never been more money for you to create your startups. There's so many funds to work on climate change. There's so many funds to work on application of AI. So it is a really good opportunity to start now, a startup on that. And the third point I'll mention is that it is a holistic issue. It's not just working on animals. It's not just working on the forests. It's the recognition that you cannot do one without the other. You cannot take care of nature without taking care of people. You cannot take care of people without taking care of nature. It is clear, for example, that there is a community, and around the communities, for example, a forest, you just don't want to take care of the forest and not consider the needs of the people that live around those. There needs to have schools, there need to have industries, there needs to have environments, transportation, all of these things. But it's also clear that if you only take care of the people and their needs and those infrastructure, buildings, and all of the consumption, you also need to take care of what is going to impact the nature. And ideally, you want to thrive and thrive in both cases, because one without the other, it just doesn't work. And we see more and more of these solutions, nature-based solutions or ecosystem services. There's some keywords that you might hear, but I don't want to make it much longer than this. So my summary of what I said is that we need you, groups of you that represent expertise or hunger or local knowledge, to work together and then not only build these solutions that use AI and data science, but also to then implement those. And there has never been a better time to do this.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Bruno. I'll invite you to stay here with us, as we'll have the panel conversation just a few minutes after the next presentation. Our next speaker is here with us in person, and she requested I reduce her impressive bio by just a bit. She'll talk about it a bit later, but she's the research scientist at Hugging Face, where she works on the ethical and societal impacts of machine learning models and data sets. Please join me in welcoming Sasha Lucioni.
Je vais parler en français pour changer un peu les choses, pour garder les interprètes un peu opérationnels. Exactement, il ne faut pas... je vais parler un peu terre à terre des outils. Je travaille pour une compagnie que vous ne connaissez pas, peut-être pas, mais je vais parler des choses qu'on crée en fait pour vous aider dans le coopérathon, dans la vie, dans votre carrière, et comment ça peut contribuer à la mission, à la santé des gens, des personnes et de la planète. Donc moi, c'est ça. Avant, j'étais ici. Et maintenant, je suis chez Hugging Face. Je travaille aussi avec une organisation qui s'appelle Climate Change AI. C'est bon à savoir, d'ailleurs, si vous voulez travailler dans cet espace, c'est une organisation qui essaie de connecter les gens qui font de l'IA et les gens qui veulent travailler sur des problèmes dans l'espace des changements climatiques. Donc, on a un site web, on a écrit un papier, on a plein de ressources. Si ça vous intéresse, allez voir. Et aussi, une autre cause à laquelle je tiens beaucoup, c'est Women in Machine Learning. On a très, très peu de femmes dans ce domaine. On est 11% à peu près. Donc, aussi, je suis sur le board d'une organisation qui essaie d'améliorer ces chiffres un peu. Hugging Face, c'est une start-up avec des bureaux principalement à Paris et à New York. Et en fait, pourquoi j'ai choisi de travailler ici? J'ai beaucoup longtemps hésité. C'est parce que c'est une compagnie qui prône vraiment la collaboration, la transparence et la responsabilité pour de vrai envers la communauté. Et donc, on s'est positionné un peu comme le GitHub de l'IA. Et en fait, lors de ma recherche d'emploi, j'ai beaucoup réfléchi à comment avoir le plus d'impact. Et je pense que beaucoup d'entre vous réfléchissaient à la même chose. Et je me suis dit que oui, bien sûr, je peux travailler sur un projet spécifique, concret. Je peux, je sais pas, modéliser le climat, par exemple. Mais quelque chose que j'aime bien faire, c'est réfléchir de manière transversale. Et en fait, je me suis dit que chez Hugging Face, ça pourrait être un bon endroit parce que en fait, c'est une plateforme où les gens partagent des modèles, des jeux de données, mais aussi, par exemple, des démos, mais aussi, je sais pas, plein d'artefacts autour de l'IA. Et en fait, ça fait qu'il y a beaucoup de liens à faire, comme Yoshua a dit, parce que quelqu'un peut entraîner un modèle sur telle chose, mais en fait, tu peux l'appliquer dans une autre chose. Tu peux le fine-tuner, tu peux le mettre à jour un peu pour être appliqué à d'autres données. Et en fait, ça permet de faire beaucoup de connexions. Je vais en parler un peu vers la fin, mais c'est pour ça que je trouve que c'est à fort impact. Et aussi, tout notre code est open source. Et ça, c'est quelque chose qui est très important. En fait, tout le mauvais code que j'écris, parce que je ne suis pas une bonne programmeuse, est open source. Et en fait, dès le départ, en fait, on n'a jamais de période que c'est privé ni rien. Tout est open, les gens contribuent. Tu as toujours des gens qui collaborent, en fait. Ça, c'est vraiment cool. En fait, peut-être vous connaissez la librairie Transformers. Il y a beaucoup de... en fait, c'est des architectures de réseaux de neurones qui sont implémentées là-dedans et ça permet aux gens de facilement télécharger un modèle et l'utiliser dans leur code, dans leur infrastructure, dans leur plateforme. Et en fait, ce qu'on fait aussi beaucoup, c'est créer des endroits où les gens peuvent partager leur modèle d'IA, mais plus que ça, de les documenter, d'expliquer comment ils sont entraînés, d'expliquer à quoi ils servent et à quoi ils ne servent pas. Très important, je sais pas, par exemple, écrire du code pour les mettre à jour, les fine-tuner, justement. Et en fait, on pousse les gens, par exemple, chaque personne qui entraîne un modèle d'IA, par exemple, pour, je sais pas, faire de la traduction français-anglais, peuvent le mettre sur Hugging Face, mais on va leur demander, OK, ben, c'est quoi les données que vous avez utilisées? Où est le code? Comment ça peut être utilisé? Est-ce que c'est applicable à telle chose ou pas telle chose? Est-ce que c'est le français québécois ou français de France, etc., etc. Donc, c'est très important de documenter les modèles d'IA parce que sinon, on ne sait pas ce qu'on fait et on ne sait pas à quoi ça sert. Aussi, même chose pour les données. De plus en plus, les gens mettent leurs données sur Hugging Face et encore une fois, on leur pose la question, c'est quoi la licence? D'où proviennent les données? Est-ce qu'il y a le consentement? Est-ce qu'il y a... Est-ce que c'est des données privées? Est-ce qu'il y a des informations sur certaines personnes? Donc, tout ça, encore une fois, c'est quoi la langue? C'est quoi la taille? Etc., etc. Et en fait, c'est une plateforme où c'est facile à trouver un jeu de données, mais aussi de savoir comment il peut être utilisé. Et en fait, depuis quelques temps, on a aussi des démonstrations. Donc, par exemple, si dans le cadre du Coopérathon, vous faites quelque chose et vous voulez faire une démo rapide, vous pouvez faire on appelle ça un space, et faire du code en Python sans JavaScript ni rien pour votre modèle, par exemple. En termes de climat et santé, j'ai 1 minute. Ce qu'on essaie de faire, c'est de connect the dots, comme dit Yoshua. Donc, on rassemble les données sur la biodiversité et on essaie d'entraîner un grand modèle pour être utilisé dans la reconnaissance des animaux, par exemple. On rassemble tous les données des différentes sources et on les utilise pour, je sais pas, pour aider les gens à reconnaître l'oiseau dans leur cours. Moi, personnellement, je travaille beaucoup sur l'empreinte carbone des réseaux de neurones, comment le réduire, comment le mesurer, comment est-ce qu'on peut prendre ça en compte. En santé, on a de la modélisation des protéines qui se fait et aussi, par exemple, l'analyse beaucoup de textes médicaux qui ont beaucoup d'informations qui est très difficile à percer, en fait, à trouver. Donc, on fait de la reconnaissance d'entités et aussi les images de pathologie. Mais encore, tout est open source, donc on invite les gens à y contribuer et à partager leurs projets. Merci beaucoup.
Super. Merci beaucoup, Sacha, pour la présentation en français. J'aimerais maintenant réaccueillir Bruno on the screen. We're going to now have a panel conversation hosted by Ilias with our three speakers. Ilias, the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. Merci beaucoup. Même énormément merci, Sacha, pour la présentation. Puis ça me fait plaisir de voir ton évolution, puis de garder quand même encore le volet open source, puis le volet OG de la démarche. Là, donc, ça fait vraiment plaisir. C'est la première fois qu'on fait un fireside chat comme ça en mode hybride, et j'ai pas envie que ce soit genre un panel de Ilias qui pose des questions à Yoshua, et à Sacha et à Bruno. J'ai envie que vous sentiez à l'aise. J'ai quelques questions en tête, là, mais...
Tu veux dire que nous, on peut te poser des questions?
Mais sentez-vous bien à l'aise si vous voulez poser l'une ou l'autre. Moi, j'avais une en tête parce qu'on a parlé quand même de quelques exemples, puis on a parlé de start-up. Au Mila, on a de plus en plus de start-up qui se lancent au Mila, puis tant mieux. Il y a un volet entrepreneuriat qui n'existait pas, peut-être pas il y a quelques années déjà. Est-ce que tu pourrais peut-être, ou vous pourriez, parce que tu étais là aussi, hein, mais est-ce que vous pourriez peut-être nous donner quelques exemples où des start-up vous accompagnez, ou à quoi ça correspond exactement? J'en ai quelques-unes en tête, là, mais sens-toi bien à l'aise.
Il y en a pas mal. Récemment, j'ai lu qu'on avait accompagné depuis les 2 ou 3 dernières années quelque chose comme 80 startups. Et là-dedans, il y a des startups qui sont comme peut-être même pas incorporées, là, des cohortes des gens qui réfléchissent à un projet, puis d'autres qui sont des vraies compagnies avec une dizaine d'employés. Donc, bon, il y a l'exemple que tu m'as mentionné tantôt, le Corbit, sont intéressants, qui travaillent dans le domaine de l'éducation. Et il n'y en a pas beaucoup, malheureusement. Je trouve que c'est un domaine, comme d'autres domaines de l'innovation, où c'est traditionnellement des choses que les gouvernements font. La santé, l'éducation, l'environnement, la justice sociale, tout ça. Et je trouve qu'il n'y a pas assez d'innovation dans ces domaines-là. Et bon, moi, j'essaie d'encourager les gouvernements à financer ou à faire du procurement pour que ça stimule la création de start-up dans ces domaines d'intérêt social.
Donc, un exemple, ou Benoît.
Ou Benoît, oui. Vas-y, parle-en.
Ah ouais, ou Benoît, c'est une start-up qui est maintenant a pris de l'essor, j'ai l'impression qu'ils ont quand même pris de l'envergure. En fait, ils essaient de... en fait, ils utilisent l'IA, ils ont réussi à dépister une maladie chez les nourrissons, qui en fait, un certain pourcentage des bébés nouveau-nés, ils naissent avec une malformation qui, justement au Canada, souvent on peut faire un test quand un médecin a un doute qu'ils ont cette malformation, mais dans beaucoup de pays, ils n'ont pas forcément accès à ces tests qui coûtent comme $150 par test. Et donc, Charles... ONU de Benoît, ils ont développé un algorithme qui, grâce au cri du bébé, genre grâce à vraiment un enregistrement sonore, peut... Live, c'est ça, live, avec un téléphone mobile, peut détecter déjà un risque de la malformation, je n'ai pas le terme exact en tête, mais en fait, comme vraiment cerner la maladie, mais sans intervention quelconque, genre juste sur le pleur.
Et si on ne le détecte pas, ces bébés-là, ils risquent d'avoir des séquelles graves au niveau de la santé mentale.
C'est un manque d'oxygène, en fait, il me semble.
C'est ça, c'est le manque d'oxygène, exactement.
Donc, vraiment du travail incroyable. Inspirant.
Juste pour terminer sur Corbit, ils utilisent donc beaucoup le NLP, langage naturel, pour développer des systèmes de tuteurs intelligents. The dialogue, let me switch to English. They use the amazing advances that have taken place in the last few years in natural language processing using deep learning to have systems that can interact in natural language with students and in a personalized way. So tracking what are your strengths and weaknesses and where you are in the curriculum so that you can ask questions that you need in order to progress as quickly as possible. And they're very serious about it. They've made actual evaluation studies with real cohorts to verify that when students use their system, they can really progress like twice faster than if you use existing, MOOCs or existing tutorial systems. And it's not a substitute for human professors. It's really to help students when they're on their own.
And I think you talked earlier about the sheer amount of data, but also the scalability of those. Like when we talk about those two solutions, it's also making it accessible, because as there are solutions that are scalable, you lower the cost, and it becomes more democratic in a way, and accessible to people in some countries that are not as lucky as we are here in Canada, because we are privileged, even if you don't like winter. Maybe a question quickly for Bruno, because I know like it's really hard it's our first real hybrid thing. Well, we did one with the Canadian Space Agency. It was just with 3 people, it was easier. Anyway, the Microsoft Planetary Computer, and I had a look at it online, and there seem to be some really interesting applications, whether it's satellite data, etc. Maybe can you tell us, like, if I'm a participant of Coopérathon, or I'm a student, or I want to aspire to potentially dive deeper into this, what is applicable? Like, we had some concrete examples here. So you're from Microsoft. You definitely have to give us some concrete stuff.
Thank you for the question. As I said in the beginning, there is a ton of information out there. And what the Planetary Computer did is to put everything together in the same place. It's all open data, all open standards, and then allow anyone to ask the questions of, for example, what data you have for Quebec or for Montreal in summer or in winter, or when it's cloudy, when it's not, and then retrieve those images from all of these satellites. And then we put a computation on top, Python or any or R or whatever thing you want to work on. And the idea is you're lowering the barrier of anyone who needs to process geospatial stuff. For example, there is now a lot of problems with heat islands effects in some cities. So there are ways to calculate this heat island effect or to measure the temperature from satellite. And if you're able to do that for one city, because satellites don't see borders and satellites see the whole world, you can scale that to pretty much the whole world. There is also cases where we've seen people look at how changes happen, changes like deforestation. How is deforestation happening in the world? Or one of the projects that Microsoft is doing now is detecting every single solar panel in the world and windmill to see how the renewable energy is evolving around the world. And one project that I did, it took me like 1 day to do this, and something that would have taken probably months to do, which was I had a few examples of aquaculture. So these nets that you put in the coast, like for example, in the coast of Vancouver Island, there's a lot of those, and there is a database of like, I don't know, 2,000 of those. And I asked the question with the Planetary Computer, show me an image of each of these locations to see how they look like. And I could see them. And then I used artificial intelligence, deep learning specifically, to tell a neural network that was pre-trained to detect other stuff to say, hey, now go learn this visual effect. And then once it was able to detect all of these aquaculture things, I set it to run in the whole world, in the whole coast, because I wanted to know how many other aquaculture facilities existed in the world, which is extremely important because in some countries it's a driver for the livelihoods. It's also in other places there's many more than they're allowed to do. So this is just an example of what you can do with the Planetary Computer. But the bottom line, I think, of all of this is that there are less and less barriers to use data and computation, AI or not, or data science, to ask questions about the Earth. This idea of the queryable Earth is something that is available to do today with things like Planetary Computer and others. So I, again, encourage everyone to ask those questions. Some of you might know how to get the answer, and some of you might not, but then in the room, I'm sure you can find groups of people that can cooperate together.
I love that. You can see Sasha, like she's a very critical person. So she being smiling and nodding. So thank you very much, Bruno. That was very, very clear. And indeed, it almost feels like we went from writing on paper to like Gutenberg or whatever printing. And we're able to print way more and do way more with less. And now as we also have low code or even no code solutions and leveraging some tools and such as yourself, I think that shows also the accessibility. There is a huge reality also that research and deeper research is what we build for the next 10, 20 years, but there is some applicability of it, thanks to the research of people like Joshua, etc., that today we can use.
Yeah, and I think based on what Joshua said, I think it's important to ask the right questions because it's really, really easy to be like, oh, I have a neural network and I'm going to do stuff with it. And, you know, like when you have a hammer, everything's a nail, right? But it's really important to work with domain experts to ask the right questions because there's a lot of questions that can't yet be answered with AI. Like we're getting there. So make sure that you're asking questions that like can be at least addressed, right?
Well, I have a comment on this. I was asked this morning a question about, you know, what is innovation? And so I think there's this interesting question. So what's the difference between innovation and research? And there's many ways you can answer that. But one axis that's related to the nail and hammer question is that a lot of what's going on in academia is very much curiosity driven.
New hammers.
New hammers, exactly. And a lot of what is going on, say, in industry is mission driven. There's this problem, you know, let's find the hammer. And of course, it's always a mix, right? But it's really a different way of thinking and of what is your focus. And we need both. Like as a society, we need both. Because we need people who are going to explore in crazy land, like me, and well, I mean, that's the thing when I wake up in the morning. Exactly. But in order to actually have impact in society, which is a lot of what this crowd is about, you need to focus on the problems you want to solve, and as Bruno was saying, how is it going to happen for real? That it's not just a paper you write, but that it's going to be used, and who are going to be the users, who are going to be people who deploy it and make it possible and finance it, and you know all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I worked for a while with the United Nations, and they're, for example, attempting to use AI in a lot of things as well. But there's such a big gap between, you know, for example, whatever, a refugee camp, and they want to figure out how many people are coming in, and neural networks that require GPUs and a lot of domain knowledge to actually like make predictions. And there's really a huge need of like taking, for example, like Joshua and I will create a neural network that will analyze satellite imagery, and you know, and then you need someone who's going to take it, who's going to, you know, create reports that people are going to use, who are going to explain to them how this works and how it can be trusted and not, and things like that. And so like bridging that gap, taking those hammers and explaining, writing some manuals for them, and actually like teaching people how to use them is like the next frontier, I think, in our field.
There you go. Well, we have the present, the future, and the next frontier. So like, just get to work. We talked a lot about questions, and I'm privileged to be around you, you three. But we also have an audience online. We have an audience in the room. Is there any question? Like we have asked people asking questions. Okay, the first one, no.
Whether AI will truly replace human interaction? Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but as I said earlier, we are machines. Now, it might take a while before we can understand this machine and build machines that have at least some level of capability. We're not there. There are many ways in which current state of the art is lacking, but I don't see any fundamental obstacle except if we self-destruct, destroy the environment, and you know, kill each other and all that.
For the question on the nurseries, I'm gonna tweet now the link to the notebook so anyone can run it.
Are there specific breakthroughs that you're aware of in AI for combinatorial drug treatments, Professor Benjio? GFlowNet.
This is a great question. What's happening right now on the drug discovery side is we're able to, with biotechnology, try thousands, tens of thousands, millions of new potential therapies, new antibodies, new drugs. in parallel in a single experiment in a test tube or a bunch of test tubes. And this is so different from how drugs and also just science of biology has been done in the last few decades that I think the combination of this new way of technically being able to measure and do experiments at a huge scale and the power of AI is going to be transformative. In fact, I think that the two areas of science that are going to have the most impact on society in the coming years are biology and AI. And they're both scary. Imagine together. But they can also be incredibly useful if we don't want to be wiped up by the next pandemic in particular. So this is happening, and companies, startups, but also huge companies are investing massively. There's like a specialized type of venture capital that's willing to wait more. So actually, if you're like on the interface between biotech and AI, you might want to go to the biotech VCs because they're willing to invest over a longer horizon than the AI VCs, which are like really in a hurry. I don't know why, but it's...
Yeah. That's a fantastic point, and I don't want to open like a whole discussion on like investments or the lack thereof, and the patient capital versus short one. That's maybe for at the end of Coopérathon when you will be looking for money, we can have like another conversation on that. But that's a real issue, but also opportunity, and I think we can do something in that regard. You talked about adoption, and well, I think working even on Hugging Face and Microsoft, I guess, we're lucky in a way, and not to promote Coopérathon or whatnot, but we're lucky in a way to bring companies at the table, to give a challenge for them to give their time, effort, and some money. There is like I hope that you're not here for the money, but we are offering more than $60,000 in prizes for the participants, so that's pretty cool. Is there any learning that you had by working with large companies versus startups, and especially for those fields that are complicated? We feel that like it's so complicated that large companies are going to take it all. Isn't there like some kind of like David and Goliath working together, or what's your opinion on that? And this is like I look like this, but like we're four, yeah. So
I think Bruno might have some opinions, right?
Well, I think there's two parts of that answer. One is that our company is a cloud provider, and when it comes to a lot of these things, we hope there's a lot of companies working this, but we also know that each of these companies is not going to have the interest to replicate 52 petabytes of data in their own accounts. And if they do, that's great business. But that's, for one part of the answer is that there is a role to play on these cloud providers and technology providers because they are natural anchors to provide services so that these businesses succeed. But then at the same time, we don't have the agility or maybe even the hunger that startups might have. So we were talking about the drivers of innovation. I think curiosity is a fantastic driver of innovation, and academia is driven mostly by curiosity. And another one is, in my view, is hunger or need. And I firmly believe that startups are much better positioned to do those things because they need to figure out faster ways to do the same thing because they don't have the resources. Like, for example, Microsoft or Google have invested, or Hugging Face, a lot of money training models from scratch. But then there has been a whole array of startups whose whole model is to avoid training from scratch and do retraining and adapting the things that work for others. They had to do it because they didn't have the money to do it from scratch. And by doing that, realized there is a much more efficient way to build their own services. And that's something that comes from the hunger of startups, not from the whatever corporate and quarterly and yearly budgets and results that I'm subject to.
Yeah, and NGOs are a whole different level. At the UN, you've got it's like years. The horizon is years. So yeah. Well, I think I agree with Bruno, but I also think that it's not. I mean, maybe this is a very naive vision, but it's not a competition. So honestly, there's enough climate change pie or health pie for about everyone. And honestly, we work with big organizations. They work together. And honestly, I think that Coopérathon is a great place to actually bring someone from university with someone from a startup with someone from Microsoft or Desjardins and then help them solve the problem together. And actually, the complementary ways of thinking can really bring things forward, because if you're in a startup and you're just like, go, 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 solve it, maybe you're going to like overlook some things. And if you're in university and, you know, you don't have, for example, all the resources of a big company, you're going to go slower. And so bringing people in the same room and the same team is really, really important.
Okay. Well, I think there is a lot. I think you're both right. I think, though, that we have to work a bit more into manufacturing that collaboration and creating spaces with people such as your leadership here. Mila has been doing amazing, and I'm not being nice just because you guys are here. A bit, but not that much, for the people who know me at least. You were able to bring researchers to choose Montreal and to choose Quebec outside from Quebec, and that's not necessarily easy because many of them don't speak French, and that's a challenge. But it's also not easy to bring in the same room corporations, and Danielle highlighted the partnership with Desjardins, and there are many, many others, Microsoft as well, etc. Students, and now more and more startups. I genuinely would love to learn your either lessons or like challenges, maybe not for today, but you have now kind of like this experiment that is happening, and you brought the right ingredients. And if we can help develop that recipe further, or if you have learned some of those aspects.
So I want to add something. We've been talking about startups and those large companies, but there's a whole thing in between. Most companies are not startups or large companies. And these companies tend to lag in terms of innovation and AI and so on. And well, that's if you're the government, they know it's a problem. And if you're in business, it's an opportunity. And I don't know why that is, but we experience this at Mila. It's much easier for us to deal with the startups and the big companies in tech, especially, or in pharma recently, than to deal with the run-of-the-mill companies. So there's lots of efforts that we and others are trying to put in to educate those companies. And mostly it's because they don't know, they're afraid, it's weird, or it's magical, they don't have the people. How do we fix this?
Well,
and startups could be part of that, I think,
yeah.
Right? They could be partners for these companies to get into that space for a reasonable price.
But I think I love what you're saying here, because it's true that, as Bruno was talking about, like startups are more hungry. We had the chance to work with some startups where the reality is like they're more agile, they have some good talents, as well as like they are more frugal. So when you say like,
well, they're in danger of dying quickly.
So they're sometimes ready to do something for the good price or a better price up until like they grow, etc. Okay. I have one last question, unless someone has a question in the room, because I want to not. Okay, wonderful. Colin has a question, but like I think you raise your hand as well. I'll go with the ladies first, if you don't mind.
Désolée. Sorry. Can I do it in French or whatever can we? Bonsoir et merci. C'est un plaisir d'entendre les experts parler. J'ai une question, je reviens sur le sujet initial et peut-être que la question elle s'adresse peut-être à votre collègue en ligne. On parle d'espace et effectivement quand on parle d'espace, les données spatiales, et quand on développe un projet vis-à-vis de l'humanitaire où tous les pans de l'économie d'une société ils sont concernés, que ce soit l'éducation comme vous l'avez dit, que ce soit l'économie en tant que telle, on a la santé, on a tous ces pans de la société. Mais quand on parle de l'espace, l'idéologie est tellement devenue tabou sur beaucoup de personnes dans les pays. C'est quand même un sujet qui est critique dans le sens où on parle d'espace, mais en même temps, on parle des avantages de l'espace pour l'utilisation sociale avec un impact social. Comment on enlève cette dichotomie de l'esprit et comment on justifie en fait
Bien sûr de comprendre la question en fait. Quand tu dis l'espace,
l'espace
parce que c'est des
spatial,
images
le
satellites.
spatial, voilà. Oui, des images.
Ah, tu veux dire le côté par exemple surveillance ou abus de ces données-là, etc. C'est une excellente question. Et en fait, c'est un enjeu pas seulement pour ces applications-là, mais dans beaucoup d'applications de l'IA. Et il y a heureusement, avec un peu de retard, de plus en plus de conscientisation par rapport aux enjeux d'impact social et des dangers d'abus. Toute la communauté d'IA est, disons, interpellée de plus en plus. Dans les conférences, on parle de plus en plus de ces questions-là. Sacha fait partie des gens qui poussent beaucoup pour ces enjeux éthiques et responsables. Pour la question des images satellites, ça dépend peut-être de la résolution. Je pense qu'à une certaine résolution, la vie privée n'est pas vraiment en jeu, mais les images que les satellites militaires peuvent voir, c'est une autre paire de manches.
Bruno, did you get the question?
Je suis désolé, mon français c'est pas bon. I think it was something about the dichotomy between privacy and satellite images.
Yeah, about essentially how
could that data be misused?
Exactly, the potential misuses of satellite data because they transcend borders and legislation.
It is a huge problem, but it's not as big as in other areas like social media or news. It is much harder, at least for now, to fake satellite images. And because the providers of those satellite images have a very high trust, because from like governments like the European Union or the US, you need to fake all of these things because every single satellite is pointing to the same locations. Like if you fake an image, I don't know, of Ukraine, it wouldn't matter much because there's other satellites that are doing this, are pointing at the same place. Privacy is a huge problem, especially when you work on satellite images for developing countries or people who have the least rights because they cannot they cannot otherwise protect themselves. So that's something that is at the core of a lot of the things we do. Fortunately, a lot of the images we have are like 10-meter resolution or less, which you cannot really see people. So privacy concerns are lower than that. Obviously, military and other applications have higher. And yes, it is an issue, and that's something we should look into those, but not stop doing it because there's such potential to help these people that not engaging should not be an option. It's a safe thing to do, but it is the irresponsible thing to do to cut it short and not engage in solving humanitarian or climate change issues because they are valid concerns we should look carefully.
Thank you very, very much, Bruno. I think I had few questions on ethics, but I won't talk about it today. Collins had a question.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. This is primarily directed at Dr. Bengio, but anybody can chime in. There's been a lot of talk this evening about themes of vision and startups, innovation versus research. Now you're a rock star, but I'm sure for...
haven't been always.
Yeah, this is the point. So going through, ultimately for years, decades, you had to champion this vision. And my question would be to bridge the vision and startups and all that kind of mentality is just to comment on maybe some of the adversity or the challenges you had to deal with going through that process.
Right. I guess I was lucky to have a lot of self-confidence, and that helps in situations where people think you're wrong. And that can happen in startups, and that can happen in science. And sticking to your vision. Now, this is a tricky thing because you can, easily, humans are like really good at fooling themselves. And so you have to keep grounded as well and use reason. reasoning, evidence. That's what science should be about, in order to not go into some completely crazy direction that's not at all plausible. Yeah, so the other thing that helped to go through those more difficult times was that I was not alone, that we were a group of similar thinking people, and I think otherwise I probably would have flipped to the dark side and expert systems, kernel machines, that's what it was. Anyways, yeah, so make sure you're surrounded when you if you're the only one on earth to have this crazy idea and you can't convince even one other person, maybe there's a problem.
Fine too. Wonderful. Écoutez, j'aimerais vraiment beaucoup continuer la conversation. I know, like you have been very, very generous with your time. Thank you so much, Yoshua Bengio, Sacha Lucioni, and Bruno. I forgot your last name and I apologize for that. And I wrote it like 20 times over the last week, so I really feel bad about forgetting
because
it.
there are 3 words to remember.
So yeah, Sanchez Andrade Nuno. Is that all right? Yes, I just wrote it. Thank you very, very much. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing your experience and expertise with our future participants, and all the bunch of people that are online. We're all back here in person. We tried to do in a hybrid format, so I'm very happy that everybody showed up, and a whole bunch are online, and you also said yes. I know you have a lot of things deliverables, etc. So taking an hour and something else per time. Sasha as well. Thank you very much. Bruno, Monsieur Bengio. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for them. Nick.
Joshua, Sasha, well, thank you again. If you want, you could take your seats or exit the room if you have to be somewhere. Bruno, well, I think you already left us. Thank you. Ilyas, don't go anywhere because we need you for the next part. Ilyas will now be telling us a bit more about this year's Coopérathon, the 7th edition.
Okay. I will do it super fast. Thank you very much.
Yeah, super fast.
So
here we go.
I'll do it extremely fast because I know that we have panelists here who have been waiting. So as you all know, Coopérathon is divided in 2 parts. The first one is for aspiring entrepreneurs that is starting today, and the workshops, the team formation after the panel that we're going to have. And the second part that is starting on October 20th, that is with startups that are more advanced. I'm not going to go into the details of like the why fundamentally, but it's to offer you a better experience as a participant, to have more tailored program for you, and for the startups to be able to have a different program with our company partners and organizational partners, and everybody wins. That's awesome, no? No, you're not. Come on, come on. Are you, yes, thank you. I like that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know it's like a long day and sometimes can feel that like, so thank you for bringing the energy back in the room. I very much appreciate it. So without further ado, I'll give back this to Nick.
That was the quickest presentation of Coopérathon in the last 7 years. Give it up for Ilyas. Amazing. Now we're going to turn to our partners to learn a bit more about them and the challenges they have. We're going to be on this side of the room now moving forward. So I'd like to welcome up our 4 panelists, starting with Gildas Poissonnier. Il est le directeur principal développement durable chez Desjardins. Ensuite, on a la directrice service conseil et pratique santé et sciences de la vie de KPMG, Élise Joly. Next, we have the sustainability program lead from Microsoft, Polina Emelianova. Et le dernier, mais non le moins, le conseiller incubation et accélération d'entreprises de la zone AgTech, Bryce Nagels. Vous avez tout un partager cela. Très bien. Les règles du jeu, ils ont chacun 90 secondes pour présenter en reverse les défis qu'ils présentent au Coopérathon cette année. They each have 90 seconds to do a reverse pitch. And we'll start with Desjardins Challenge.
Merci Nick. Alors écoutez, moi je vous invite dans le monde du défi de la réduction des gaz à effet de serre dans une entreprise, une grande entreprise. Et pour illustrer ce monde-là, parlons de Desjardins un peu. Vous avez déjà entendu sans doute des émissions et des ambitions de carboneutralité. On a une ambition 2040 de carboneutralité sur 3 aspects de nos activités. 1, les opérations. Ça, pensez à nos buildings, nos immeubles, pensez à nos flottes de véhicules. Deuxièmement, nos émissions financées dans 3 secteurs clés, énergie, transport et énergie. Et le troisième, et c'est là que je veux vous amener, c'est notre chaîne d'approvisionnement. C'est-à-dire qu'on veut connaître notre empreinte carbone sur nos achats. Les achats de Desjardins, eh ben, pensez à par exemple, nos achats de papier, mais surtout nos achats de services professionnels, nos achats d'équipements informatiques. Tout ça, il faut le comprendre et le mesurer. Et pourquoi l'empreinte de cette chaîne d'approvisionnement, c'est clé? Parce que ça représente souvent une beaucoup plus grande part des émissions d'une entreprise. Aujourd'hui, ça représente sans doute environ 11 fois l'empreinte carbone des opérations d'une entreprise. Alors, le problème, c'est que les entreprises...
Time's up pour le 90 secondes, mais je te laisse parler la problématique.
Alors, on vous attend pour le défi sur la chaîne d'approvisionnement. Merci.
Merci Gildas. C'est pas évident, 90 secondes, mais on passe au prochain avec KPMG. Élise va le présenter.
Je vais essayer de relever le défi. Merci beaucoup. Alors, avec les bouleversements qu'on a vécus dans les dernières années, à savoir la crise sanitaire, mais aussi les technologies émergentes, le décloisonnement des données, la multiplication des diverses technologies auxquelles on a accès, eh bien, on a de plus en plus d'opportunités d'innover dans le domaine de la santé et des services sociaux. Donc, aujourd'hui, ensemble, on se tourne vers le futur et nous recherchons des solutions diversifiées et nouvelles en vue de promouvoir la santé de nos communautés. La démocratisation du processus d'innovation qui nous permet un exercice aujourd'hui comme celui de participer au défi du Coopérathon, ce qui est bien, c'est que tous peuvent contribuer, peu importe leur expertise, leurs expériences, leur profil, leur âge, en vue de relever un défi que l'on espère vous allez trouver mobilisateur, celui de valoriser la donnée en vue, celui de valoriser la donnée en vue de supporter la santé de l'humain. Donc, au plaisir.
Merci beaucoup, Élise. Tu as fait ça pile poil dans les 90 secondes, donc merci beaucoup. Le prochain, c'est le défi de Microsoft. Et pour le présenter, on a Paulina.
Merci. Okay, je vais essayer de... actually, I'm going to switch to English, if that's okay. I'm going to try to stick to my timing. So what we're here to talk about today, the health of the planet and the health of people, is probably some of the biggest challenges of our lifetime, but also some of the most exciting. And science tells us that we don't have that much time. And if we are to really move into a future that is low carbon, that is safe and prosperous for all of us, we have to move quite fast. And technology is here to help us. And it is a tool that we're going to need to leverage. So as much as companies like ours, we can make commitments, and we're committed to being carbon negative, zero waste and water positive. But we think our biggest impact is really going to come through investing in innovation and helping everyone else leverage the technology that we provide. So our challenge here is for you to think about ideas and solutions to reduce the impacts of climate change. So think about the changes that are happening in our climate in all spheres that we're observing now, and how they're impacting our communities and our livelihoods. And also think about circular economy and how AI and data science can help reduce the use of resources in our economy or make them circular and have them reused. So look forward to your thoughts and ideas and learning together with you. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Paulina. And the last person to speak is Bryce with Zone AgTech. 90 seconds. Start now.
90 seconds. All right. So if we're talking about health and, like in the environment, food is the biggest probably the biggest solution that we have to fix this. So we're putting out a challenge for anybody that has anything to help farmers of today solve some of the problems that we have. So we're looking towards AI and genomics specifically to find solutions that will help us. I mean, if we look at the bigger issue, 5% of the planet right now is feeding everybody else, 95% of the people. So these people, there's less and less resources, and we have to optimize and optimize and optimize. And I think that AI and genomics specifically really bring a very powerful tool to these people who are feeding the planet. So that's our challenge.
Very well said. Thank you, Race. All right, so now the idea is they're going to ask each other questions to learn more about the challenges, and we dive a bit deeper. So it's really free for the next 10 minutes or so. We have the time here. Judas, veux-tu lancer la balle avec une première question à un de tes collègues?
Oui, Brice, au niveau de la génomique, est-ce qu'il y a un axe, par exemple, résistance à la sécheresse, un angle particulier que vous explorez?
Une bonne question. Donc la génomique, en fait, ça touche à beaucoup. La science de la vie, les plantes, c'est vraiment, il y a tellement de profondeur sur ce qu'on peut trouver. Ça peut être sur la résistance, mettons, je peux utiliser un exemple concret, une compagnie avec laquelle on travaille en ce moment qui s'appelle AIOS, qui ont découvert qu'il y a une maladie racinaire qui a au-dessus de 250 variétés, en fait. Selon la variante de maladie, ils sont capables d'utiliser un gène RPS qui est déjà prédestiné à être résistant à ces variantes-là. Donc, ils sont capables de faire des recommandations qui vont aider à mettons, augmenter la productivité de jusqu'à 10 à 15% dans un champ de soya. Donc, c'est des solutions même qu'on va aller chercher.
Je t'invite à lancer la balle par la suite et maintenant tu lances une question. Ah, à moins que tu aies une question. Vas-y.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't mind. I think maybe my question will go to Elise. No, I'm wondering quite simply, really, because there are so many different technologies utilized in the health sector. I'm wondering why AI and data and AI specifically is where you're putting your hopes and your investment.
Oui, excellente question. Merci, Paulina. Je pense qu'on a remarqué dans les dernières années, plus particulièrement avec l'informatisation du réseau, l'accès à de plus en plus de données. Donc, je me souviens un peu plus tôt, nos collègues au niveau du panel parlaient de natural language processing. Comment est-ce qu'à travers les notes des professionnels de la santé, on peut avoir accès et venir leverager des données qui sont existantes présentement pour au service et pour promouvoir la santé ou encore prédire des maladies. Donc, je pense que le contexte est bon. On a aussi le contexte politique, je pense, au niveau du Québec qui, en ce moment, nous amène à être beaucoup préoccupés par ça avec les différents projets de loi. Donc, on a le projet de loi 64, on a aussi le projet de loi 19 qui s'en vient au niveau de la santé qui vont nous donner un accès à une multitude de données où on se dit, j'aimerais bien avoir le point de vue de toutes ces belles personnes qui sont présentes aujourd'hui, qui veulent relever le défi sur comment on pourrait les utiliser, comment est-ce qu'on pourrait aller plus loin dans des avenues pour supporter la santé de nos populations, prévenir la maladie et s'engager dans une logique de promotion de la santé, pas toujours être en curatif puis être vraiment hospitalo-centrique et en lien avec les milieux de soins. Je pense que de démocratiser ça en décloisonnant les données, ça offre vraiment de belles opportunités. Donc, voilà ce qui nous inspirait chez KPMG. Peut-être que j'en profiterai pour relancer la balle à ce moment-là vers mes collaborateurs, mais Paulina aussi, je pense que dans le panel d'experts, ce qu'on a entendu beaucoup, c'était cette question-là de démocratisation et du fait qu'on n'a pas besoin nécessairement d'être un expert. Je me remets un peu dans mes souliers lorsque j'étais étudiante ou lorsque j'avais peut-être moins d'expérience professionnelle et je me dis comment est-ce que ces gens-là peuvent contribuer à trouver des solutions sans nécessairement être des experts. Comment est-ce que les connaissances qu'ils ont ou les expériences qu'ils ont peuvent permettre de répondre à ton défi?
Super question. Thank you so much, Elise. So, yeah, I think some of the biggest value that anyone can bring into the challenge is really understanding what, it's been mentioned before, what questions we want to answer. We all live in our communities, no one better than us knows how we are impacted and what kinds of changes we're seeing around us. So I think that's the number one thing that we want to start with is what is the question? I think Albert Einstein, if I don't want to quote wrong, but he used to say that if he has an hour to answer a question, to answer a question, he'll spend 55 minutes looking for the right question. So I think this is the biggest values we can bring, is to really identify what kind of question we want to answer based on our experiences, based on our understanding, based on maybe a little bit of research, and then you can start looking for the answers and the experts and the skills to help.
So I think maybe this is for Microsoft. Pauline. So I work with a lot of startups. My job is business acceleration. So I'm always in there with companies that are trying to get off the ground. And in AI in particular, it's not an easy field to get into. There's the question is not even like how can AI help? The question is, what is the issue? And so what is Microsoft doing to help younger entrepreneurs kind of understand what kind of tools are actually available and what are the issues that these tools can solve?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think quite a few of us can find AI a little bit intimidating if we don't understand it. I don't pretend to understand it that well in my role, but once you're exposed to it, it's true. And once you have the information, that you understand how democratized it has become. So we have, especially in this program, we are providing a training workshop in early October with some of our experts in AI. We are providing access to the expertise that we have at Microsoft to really to go deeper and understand it, but also part of the democratization of AI is this, low code, no code access, right? You don't actually need to be able to code anymore. And once you're exposed to it and you see how it works without having to use code, it really allows anyone to have the access that they need to the resources and the power of AI. Oh, and one more thing, actually, as part of this Coopérathon, we're also providing access to our Entrepreneurs for Positive Impact program, which is kind of a long-term community of resources and support for organizations and startups as well.
Super. J'ai une question pour toi, Gildas. Avec le défi de Desjardins, quel impact est-ce que vous souhaitez avoir, soit au sein de Desjardins ou pour la collectivité elle-même?
Oui, effectivement, ce qu'on se rend compte là, c'est que les entreprises aujourd'hui, elles ne comprennent pas l'empreinte carbone de leur chaîne d'approvisionnement. Et ça, c'est vraiment un enjeu clé pour accélérer nos objectifs climatiques en termes d'économie et de société. Donc, effectivement, pour nous, ça serait utile, mais de comprendre l'empreinte, mais également de comprendre les alternatives. Et donc ça, je pense que c'est de manière, en allant chercher justement cette science de valorisation des données sur les secteurs, les empreintes sectorielles des entreprises dans ces secteurs, d'être capable d'accélérer la prise de décision. On parlait que beaucoup d'entreprises, c'est des PME, elles n'ont pas forcément accès à des outils et des conseils personnalisés. Donc d'avoir des outils automatisés qui permettent de comprendre l'impact de tes achats, c'est très, très, très critique. Et pour nous, Desjardins, ça va nous aider, mais on pense aussi que pour l'ensemble de nos membres clients, mais aussi pour l'ensemble de nos communautés, ça peut permettre d'accélérer cette transition économique et écologique qu'on cherche à atteindre.
On a une autre question.
Yes, I have one maybe for Bryce, because I think there's a really cool crossover between our challenges. So thinking about the challenges in the agriculture sector, and I know you talked a little bit about increasing efficiency because we're going to have so many more people to feed in the short term of time. But how are you also thinking about climate change and the impact of climate change on crops and how that needs to be taken into account once people are looking for solutions?
Okay, well, it's a very complex question because climate change is, by definition, very unpredictable. So one of the issues that we have is that we're trying to feed the world right now. Like this, we have a very global market. So commodities move across everywhere, and to be able to track those kind of things, for one, would be of huge service because there's such a fluctuation. But there's a lot of access. That's one of the problems. Is like food waste, for example. A lot of stuff just ends up getting buried in the field or these kind of things. If we have tools where, I'll give an example of another Quebec-based company called Lapam AgTech. They developed a robot that harvests broccoli. It's super cool. And one of the cool things is that they can select like a crown head size for broccoli, and they can selectively pick just those ones. But at the same time, they're monitoring everything that's in the field, and they know what's coming in the next 10 days, 5 days, whatever. And that data can actually serve to fill the supply chain more effectively. So there's less waste. So that's one of the ways that we're looking at taking this. I mean, it's really endless. Like agriculture is by far the biggest industry. So if we can provide tools to help make things more efficient, then we're going to be a lot better suited to help reduce, pressure on land use, on, like less pesticides. If you can have an optic system that can actually just go and fertilize or, like put pesticides on a specific plant instead of spraying an entire field, it's reductions of, 15, 17% today, but perhaps in the future, not very far in the future, we'll see reductions of 50 to 75% on pesticide use. Like these are all things that add up to creating a huge difference.
Thanks, Bryce. I didn't expect to leave here learning something new about broccoli this evening, but very good to know. That's all the time we have for the panel. Bryce, Paulina, Elise, Gildas, merci beaucoup. The partners are going to be here with us this evening. If you do have questions, I'm sure they'll be happy to answer the questions just after. We're going to move on to the last part of the evening, and this is where the evening splits in two. So for people listening online, you're going to have your own experience. I invite you to click on the AMA section, where my friend Mirella will be there to guide you through and walk you through this next step of the evening. And for everyone here in person, to explain the networking and the team building part, I'd like to welcome the two leaders behind the Coopérathon. We have the lead from the Coopérathon, Jean-François Bonne, and the general manager at Montreal New Tech, Simran Kanda.
Merci beaucoup, Nicolas, pour cette animation, information que je dédie donc aux participants du Coopérathon, parce que maintenant, nous allons passer, vous allez commencer à travailler, à vous rencontrer. On va se retrouver de l'autre côté, et il y a 3 zones de l'autre côté. Il y a une zone dédiée aux partenaires. Vous allez pouvoir vous retrouver